Have you ever wondered why we have the first Monday of September off school every year? Well, you're in luck because today we are talking about Labor Day. So let's get started. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Virtual History 360. I'm Mr. Wade, and today we are going to talk about the history of Labor Day. And be sure to stick around until the end of the video to hear about what happened at the very first Labor Day parade in 1882, and why it almost didn't happen. But before we get to the parade, we should talk about what Labor Day is and what it represents. Now, according to the Department of Labor on their official site, Labor Day is an annual celebration of the social and economic achievements of American workers. The holiday is rooted in the late 19th century, that's the 1800s, when labor activists pushed for a federal holiday to recognize the many contributions workers have made to America's strength, prosperity, and well-being. But what does that mean? Well, it means that American labor has raised the nation's standard of living and contributed to the greatest production the world has ever known. And the labor movement has brought us closer to the realization of our traditional ideals of economic and political democracy. This is why the nation pays tribute on Labor Day to the creator of so much of the nation's strength, freedom, and leadership, the American worker. Now, this was not always easy. The American worker has gone to war with companies over and over again. If you want to see an example of this, check out my video on the Ludlow Massacre. It's going to be in the card up here in this area. But the movement had a small start. You see, before it was a federal holiday, Labor Day was recognized by labor activists and individual states on a smaller scale. After city ordinances or city laws were passed in 1885 and 1886, a movement developed to secure state legislation. New York was the first state to introduce a bill, but it was Oregon that was the first to pass a law recognizing Labor Day on February 21, 1887. During that year, 4 more states, Colorado, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York, passed laws creating a Labor Day holiday themselves. By the end of the decade, Connecticut, Nebraska, and Pennsylvania had followed suit. By 1894, 23 more states had adopted the holiday, and on June 28, 1894, President Grover Cleveland signed a law making the first Monday in September of each year a national holiday. Many Americans celebrate Labor Day with parades, picnics, and parties. Festivities very similar to those outlined by the first proposal for a holiday, which suggested that the day should be observed with a street parade to exhibit the strength and esprit de corps of the trade and labor organizations of the community, followed by a festival for the recreation and amusement of the workers and their families. This became the pattern for the celebrations of Labor Day. Now, of course, today we seem to only focus on getting the day off of work or of school, but it is very important to remember the origins. So, what happened or almost didn't happen at the first parade? Well, let's get the story going. On the morning of September 5, 1882, a crowd of spectators filled the sidewalks of Lower Manhattan near City Hall and along Broadway. They had come early to claim the best view of the first Labor Day parade. The police, who were wary that a riot would break out, were out in force that morning as well. By 9 a.m., columns of police and club-wielding officers on horseback surrounded City Hall. By 10 a.m., the Grand Marshal of the parade, William McCabe, his aides, and the police escort were all in place for the start of the parade. There was only one problem. None of the men had moved. The few marchers that had shown up on time had no music. According to McCabe, the spectators began to suggest that he give up the idea of parading, but he was determined to start on time with the few marchers that had shown up. Suddenly, Matthew McGuire of the Central Labor Union of New York ran across the lawn, ran up to him and told McCabe that 200 marchers from the Jewelers Union of Newark II had just crossed the ferry, and guess what? They had a band. So, just after 10 a.m., the marching jewelers turned on the lower Broadway. The police escort then took its place in the street. When the jewelers marched past McCabe and his aides, they followed in behind. Then, spectators began to join the march. Eventually, there were 700 men in line in the first of 3 divisions of Labor Day marchers. Final reports of the total number ranged from 10 to 20,000 men and women marching through Lower Manhattan that day. The New York Tribune reported that, quote, "The windows and roofs and even the lampposts and awning frames were occupied by persons anxious to get a good view of the first parade in New York of working men of all trades united in one organization." And then, after the parade, from 1 p.m. to about 9 p.m. that night, nearly 25,000 Union members and their families filled the park and celebrated the very first and almost entirely disastrous Labor Day. What do you think of the history of Labor Day? What do you plan to do with this day off? Tell you what, tell me in the comments below what you got going on. And of course, while you're there, go ahead and hit that like button for me. You know, I love the engagement. And if that button's red, let's turn it gray. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And be sure to check out my other videos, like the ones you see to the side over here. I have other history videos, random history, US, world. I have civics. I even have videos that are shot in 360 that you can look all the way around. So check them out, because I know you're going to like them. All right, so for Virtual History 360, I'm Mr. Wade. I'll see you next time.